use cases, both from a process and technology perspective. Since we are a new team, I will mainly kind of share what is our vision and what are the things we have started doing, what are the things we want to do, and also share of my experiences from other places. Myself, I have started as a data scientist, and since then I have worked hands-on with data and later leading data science teams from banking, from biopharma, biotech, and also in health tech startups. So I have a lot of experiences of what it can be done and what it also can go wrong, and I'm looking forward to share them with you. First, an introduction to who is Novo Nordisk. We are a global pharma company located here in Copenhagen, Denmark, and we want to produce drugs to increase the quality of life of people living with diabetes. Now we're expanding to obesity and other serious chronic diseases. We have a global footprint. Naturally, we work in 170 markets, and we have production facilities all over the world. We are considered among the world's 10 largest pharma companies with regards to market value, and we are around 43,000 employees. And of course, when you think about scaling analytics in a company of 43,000, and especially in a more traditional industrial pharma company, is definitely not an easy job. But in theory, it should be easy, especially given the fact that we are all kind of data people here. It's a matter of a simple, in theory, equation, right? So if we start from the right-hand side to focus on the right business value, to put your eggs in the right baskets, and then work backwards in order to achieve this value, what technology I need, what kind of people I need, and how to have an operating model, which is basically the function itself, to keep improving this and to keep scaling my technology and people. And today I will share some of the learnings on each elements of the equation. But as we also discussed yesterday, based also on Jon's excellent presentation, it's very easy to focus on the wrong thing. It's very easy to focus on solving this equation for the wrong output. So we need to find a way to how to identify the right business value, and also how to be able to scope and fail fast, because a lot of the times we've experienced that we are focusing on the wrong things, or we might not have the necessary technology, or the data might not even be there. So in order to be able to fail fast and scope on the right things, we want to work on what we call these data to wisdom sprints. So based also on the presentation you mentioned yesterday, from Finnair, we want to also apply design thinking on the way we approach our data science problem. And basically work across in the organization of having these data hackathons, where we go in an area and then in a course of 2-4 weeks, we try to find what actually we can do. From first understand and identify what could be the problem, and that starts by having a KPI tree from what is their KPIs from this specific line of business, mapping the value stream of the respective business function, then translate it to data sources, and then try to see how this data, with the help of analytics, can actually help your business outcomes. Then once we have a list of ideas and we have mapped this, then we need to prioritize what we can try, create some hypotheses, start crunching the data, then prototype the findings, usually in a very nice UI. People are visual beings. And then based on this, discuss with our business colleagues if we continue or we stop. And this is a very quick way to identify if what we want to solve is worth solving. And what we expect as an input for this, of course, time, 2 to 4 weeks, and then a cross-functional team that we bring the data scientists and the data engineers, and then our business colleagues bring definitely the functional business experts. And of course, we need to have a common will and belief in the potential of the data before we even start. And the output of this, it's a very good data stress test on the data quality. We've done this 3 times so far, and naturally, a lot of our findings are also on data quality and data improvements, which we can give back to our data office and to a data governance office. And by doing that, it's also a very nice way to stress your quality of the data. A lot of the times we speak about data not being good enough, but we don't know what they should be good enough for. So stretching it against specific use cases gives very concrete feedback of what data quality issues we have. Then we also had some very quick learnings on data and technology improvements, fast insights and POC, feasibility of what we need regarding data, technology, and people to scale a project. And then back to also the change management we are discussing before, by having people from a technical background working together with the business people in a common kind of workshop, it helps a lot to create this tech and business knowledge exchange. And it's a more organic way to upskill the organization. After we focus on how to fail fast or how to scope on the right things, then it's also very important to how to take it further. Once you find something, once you find a signal in the noise, how you take it further, both from a process perspective and a technology perspective. And when it comes to scaling it from a process perspective, we want to create this analytics funnel that we start with a data to wisdom sprints. Based on the outcome of the sprint, we decide then with our business colleagues, does it worth to go to the next step or not? If we go, then we have to build an MVP and learn and create a tangible product so we get direct feedback from the users of the product. Then again, have a gate of does it work to implement it, scale, deploy the model live, create all the infrastructure to monitor and so forth, and then operate it. And I think a realization for me working in different data science teams is to have this in your mind and be explicit also to your stakeholders, what is the process? And taking also into account the operations, because we always think the operations very late and then bites at the end. So we already start hiring people for the operations part and already start having setups for operations, even though not all of our projects are, of course, in that funnel yet. And another way also to make sure that what you're building is worth building for, we actually get funding from our line of business colleagues in regards to the implement, scale, and operate level. And that has a twofold approach. One, to be sure that what we build for, again, is worth building for because line of business is worth to invest. And second, helps the team grow and help us expand and get more resources and more technological capabilities as well. So once we focus on on how to fail fast and scope the problem, and then how to scale from a process perspective, it's also important to find how to scale from a technology perspective, because a lot of the times the analytics projects fail, not only because the business value is not there, not only because of data quality, but a lot of the times about technology. So in a large company like this, we see a lot of what we call orphaned analytics, and we want to find a way to avoid this POC hell from a technology perspective. And therefore, we want to create this machine learning factory where actually, regardless where you sit in the organization as a data scientist, it will be very easy for you to have these ready-made components for the whole machine learning life cycle, from getting the data to creating the features, to building the model, to assessing the model, to deploying the model and monitor the model. And we want to create these Lego bricks, that we call them, that people can actually use based on what they need on the project. And in that way, making it way easier for them to focus on what to build rather than how to build it. So when it comes to data features, we are looking at how to provide data lineage, feature store. I think that comes later on the maturity level, and metadata. Then on the model, how to have a model zoo, how to make it easy that me as a data scientist, I can see what other models have been built in the organization. Of course, how to have a model lineage and model versioning. Then how to assess the model, having standard explainability techniques and a definition of what we recommend for what kind of model. How to deploy model, to have reference architectures and frameworks and code of this is how you can do it if you want to batch model. This is how you can do it for a streaming model and so forth. And last but not least, how to create this watchtower that you can actually monitor your models, where you can actually very easy as a data scientist, once you deploy a model, you put it in this watchtower platform or you use the watchtower framework, and then you can see your model performance. And then ideally, and that's also what we're looking for, to get also notified if you have data drift, if you have model drift, and that goes even further, right, to the model observability techniques. And in order all of this to be true, of course, we also need to have our house in order to create a machine learning CI/CD to mature it further. We have one and that's want to mature it further, to make it easy to provide standard environments based on the machine learning problem you want to solve, to be very explicit on continuing our approach to have infrastructure as code, and then to make it also very easy, especially when you work on the R&D space, to have scalable computational resources and a cost transparency. And by building this machine learning factory, we want to naturally reduce the times from POC to in production. And we want to enable our people to scale analytics from a technology perspective. So once we focus on how to focus on the right use cases, how to scale from a process perspective, and how to scale from a technology perspective, it's also important to work on our people. And I think there was already excellent topics on this. And of course, we also want to do similar initiatives, and we have started doing similar initiatives. One is, of course, focus on the team. What is the right team to handle the use cases? And the second, of course, is to focus on the rest of the organization. When it comes to the team, what we have found works really well is to have the following profiles. And it doesn't mean that it has to be one-to-one relationship by people and skill set, but at least we see it as a checklist every time we start a project, what kind of skills we need. Of course, data engineer. I think in this group is no surprise that the ground truth of, I think, needing in average 2 to 3 data engineers for every data scientist is true. So we need data engineers, we need data scientists. Sometimes it's also very helpful to have data analysts, more these traditional BI profiles, especially when it comes to these data to wisdom sprints. We found it was very useful to have also these data analysts because they know the data of their organization, especially when it comes to legacy data. They can make some very quick visuals and POCs, so it's really nice to have them on board. Then software developers based on what we need. And then that's what I see from what it comes from our side, from the technology side. But of course, it's very important to be adamant on also having the right people from the business side. A data master, somebody that actually knows what do the data mean and how well they reflect the business process of what you try to simulate or predict. Then a domain expert. And ideally, this person should be the business person that will use what you're building on the other side of the table. For example, if we will make an inventory stock-up prediction model, it's very important to have people like planners that are going to use the end solution, being part of building the solution and giving feedback. Then the IT mover in a large organization, and I'm sure we've all experienced this, sometimes you might lose time on very menial tasks of trying to get access to different data, waiting for accounts to be built and stuff like this. So it's very important to have this person that can move around and help you go away from all this so the team can actually focus on the value. And last but not least, especially in a regulatory space, it's also very important to have the right security experts. Me included, as a data scientist, I always believe, I don't like they're gonna just drag us along. And deep inside, I didn't want to bring them. On the other hand, on retrospect, I'm realizing it's very important to have them on board early on. Otherwise, you're gonna pay it later, and then of course you will even slower down your project further. So this is what we see from a team perspective. And then of course, we also have to discuss how to work from creating data or analytics literacy in the organization. Personally, I don't really believe on the terms of literacy because it assumes people are illiterate, but it's also a little unfair on how they can be literate on something that is still very recent. But anyway, what we want to do and we have started doing in some cases is we want to focus on these three organizational personas. One, the C-level, that they need to be more data strategists and having data strategy sessions with them. And another thing we are toying with the idea of maybe having also tech mentorships. And what do I mean by that? Is that we pair a C-level executive or an executive with a more technology person. So they learn from each other. One learns the business, the other learns the technology in a safe environment. And also the executives knows the know-who and the technology person knows the know-how. Then from the middle layer or from the middle managers, it's very important to think how to create these data translator skills. Once they have these daily KPIs or monthly or whatever, these KPIs, this business process, they have to have the ability to imagine with the goals and problems I'm sitting here in my business function, how this can be solved or augmented or improved by machine learning. And it's very difficult to make this leap because you don't know what you don't know naturally. So it's also our responsibility as analytics leaders to demystify some of these things and maybe having some introduction to machine learning. And another thing that we found works very well to help facilitate this data leaders network, where they can actually work and exchange ideas and projects with other managers working on analytics projects across the organization. And last but not least, we should not forget the people in the ground, those that they actually do the work. So it has to be an easy path for people that want to enter this field to have some standard programming, machine learning offers and so forth. But also it's very important for the people that are in the field already to make sure they constantly get upskilled. I have my modus operandi that I want the people in my team and my area to be recruitable at any moment from the outside. And it doesn't mean because I want them to leave, but because I want to make sure that the skills they have are recruitable. And for that, it's very important to, of course, have some certain paths and some workshops. For example, we had a deep learning workshop, and to endorse and allow time for also this learning. And in Novo, we also have innovation days. We also have a very good grassroots data science community. So we are getting there, but I think it's very important to constantly look ahead and say, what skills do these people need? And this is how, in my mind, we can work with scaling the analytics across the organization as a function of focusing on the right value, scaling from a process and technology perspective, and then scaling analytics in regards to people. All this looks super nice in slides, But of course, the difficulty is when translating this to implementation. And here I have some learnings I would like to share with you. And I'm sure if I sit here 1 year from now, this list will get exponentially large. And I will also, of course, like to hear your opinions of what you have experienced. So first, analytics should be servant to business strategy. That comes as no surprise. And that's why I avoid also speaking about an AI strategy or analytics strategy. Because when you speak like this, you put it kind of in the same term as the business strategy. There's definitely has to be an analytics strategy regarding the implementation of the technology and people training and so forth. But when it comes to what you need to do and what projects to consider, that should only be dictated by the existing business strategy. Second, diversify use case portfolio. It's very easy to stuck in this POC hell and do only the quick wins. And in the beginning, you need them. But then while you mature of an area, is also very important to create, also to diversify your portfolio to get some bigger bets. Then avoid the IKEA effect or take indulgence. Well, I don't know, I think we have somebody from IKEA also in the call. There's a indirect value proposition of IKEA that people support what they have been built themselves. And that's also very common in the data science field. We always get attracted to what we build regarding to the most complicated model, or when we build things about technology and frameworks instead of using something that already exists out there or is as a service or is open source. So trying to avoid this effect and find the balance of how can I make my model as simple as possible and what is out there from a technology perspective that I can look instead of reinventing the wheel. Then think operations early. I've worked in many digital transformations that has beaten us many times because of course you don't want to bring the operations party pooper early on, but then it's too late once you have something and you have time to operate. So it's very important even in the beginning of the journey to think how, from a process and technology perspective and people perspective, what we are building will get operated. Then be close to your IT if you're not already in the IT function. We are lucky that we are, but otherwise it will also kind of drag you along. And I see a lot of analytics teams having frictions with the IT organization, and it's better to just work together than working on parallel. And last but not least, communicate. We discussed also before, everything is about change management. So, and it's very difficult for people to imagine what is possible and increase their solution space they have in the mind unless you tell them so, unless you bring the good stories along, unless you bring, I think was mentioned before, to bring the business people, share their stories, to share every learning you have from every sprint, from every project. And if you think you're communicating enough, I bet you don't, because I think that's never enough. And that's it for me. I'm looking forward also to hear your learnings. And
thanks a lot. Thank you so much for insightful presentation. This is not just my words. You can look at the chat area. And Nicole Shine, the first question, great approach from data to wisdom. How did you go about bringing together the right people together from different areas? Any learnings you can share would be great.
I think we have this setup already, right? So we saw it in advance and we say that if you want us to do it, we need this input. We need the right persons also from your side. Now we are still a very new team. So now we don't focusing on like long, big cross-functional areas. We focus on specific areas like finance or, so it's easier because they're under the same kind of like area, if you say, but it really helps to say, if you want this, then we also need that from you and state that in advance, because a lot of the times analytics is perceived as a service, but it's in reality a partnership, right?
Thanks a lot. I made everybody having possibility of mic and camera on because of the networking breakout time in 4 minutes. But Jon Park from Danske Bank, you have a question, please switch on the camera and mic to ask directly.
Yeah. Hi, Tonia. Hopefully you can hear me.
Yes.
Thanks for a super great presentation and for providing a really, I think, a good overview of the bridge between POC and operations. Very elegantly presented. So have you, in your experience, going from the journey from POC or design sprint over MVP, scale up to final operations, have you ever experienced any cases where you would see successful outcomes? Let's say that for every step that you took, there was clear feasibility and clear viability, but for some reason it never got picked up by the business, and so you ended up actually losing out on the benefits, even though it was technically possible from a data point of view and a tech point of view. Have you ever experienced that?
Yes, of course. And that's why also we're working with the design sprint, right? Because they have to be part of the process in advance. And that's kind of the positive part of the IKEA effect. If they are part of building it, then it's easier to naturally support it. So by having them part of the MVP, that helps because they defined what we want to try. And of course, then you have to have them in the same team of building it once again, because in the end of the day, it's not your success as an area, it should be their success. And if they feel it's their success, then they will be part of it. But they have to be part of it very on. And that's why I think the design sprint is very important. Otherwise, exactly, we might risk just continue doing things and then they don't believe in it. But to be fair, there has been also times that we work a little extra after the MVP to prove it. If we needed that, oh, we have a little more to show.
Thank you for that explanation, Tonia.
Thanks a lot. So just I add this part to be fast because we have 2 minutes left, and automatically in 2 minutes you will be divided to different rooms. Okay, so please stay in your room. Please try to switch on camera and mic in 2 minutes. When you go to the room, please try to be, just take it easy, relax, and raise your own challenge and questions in 2 minutes. Now, the question I had a while ago, just going up to the chat, Vahidul from Electrolux, brilliant presentation. Thank you for sharing your learnings. I especially like the part that we must be one with IT and not build parallel